Hi, my name is Adiri Zansky-Nir. Welcome to the Healthcare Stage, the go-to podcast for innovators dedicated to enhancing health and wellness globally. In each episode, we dive into insightful conversations with those at the forefront of healthcare innovation.
This episode is dedicated to ClearCut Medical, a commercial stage medical device company based in Israel. The company developed an innovative, compact, fully shielded MRI system for the operating room. It is designed to allow the surgeon real-time input of intra-operative margin assessment of excised tissue during breast conservative cancer surgery, also known as lumpectomy. Despite the existence of various techniques used to date, it is still difficult for surgeons to fully detect cancerous cells at breast tumor margins during the operation. And in 25% of procedures, the women undergoing lumpectomy are asked to return for a second surgery. The device developed by ClearCut provides the surgeon real-time data during surgery, which does not require the interpretation of a pathologist and allows the surgeon to immediately proceed and remove the remaining malignant tissue, and by doing so, to prevent an additional surgery. The system is CE marked, and ClearCut started selling it in Europe in 2023. Up until now, the company raised $23 million. They are now planning to raise additional $15 million, which will allow them to pursue FDA approval, to enhance sales in Europe, and to develop additional indications. If you're an investor interested in opportunities in the medical device space, this podcast is for you. I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Chezi Himmelfarb, the CEO of ClearCut, as my guest today. With a 25 years tenure in the medical device sector, Chezi has held the CEO position at both Instant and Rimon Medical, two prominent companies in the cardiovascular field. Instant was acquired by Medtronic, and Rimon was purchased by Boston Scientific. Following these successful ventures, Chezi led I ClearCut, known for its cryoablation system aimed at treating breast tumors, before taking the lead at two additional firms. 2 years ago, Chezi chose to collaborate with the founders of ClearCut, whom he had known personally for many years. As pioneers in the miniaturization of MRI technology, his decision to join ClearCut was driven not only by his confidence in the founders' technological capabilities, but also by his belief in the transformative potential of MRI technology. He envisioned a new era where the known benefits of MRI could be integrated into the operating room through a mobile, compact, and user-friendly machine, moving beyond the conventional confines of large MRI suites. Hi, Chezi.
Hi, Adi. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm looking forward to conversation. Tell us something about yourself.
So actually, you told almost everything, but I will start by telling that originally I'm an electronics engineer. Before joining the medical device area, I worked for 15 years in the high-tech area. Then I moved to the medical area and decided that this is exactly what I want to do. So I will not get back to the high-tech area because of the difference in medical area. It's different because you help people, and you help people that has something wrong in their health. And this is what I'm doing in the last 25 years. And I hope to continue doing in the next years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's different when you work in an industry that is able to improve people's life. Nothing can compete with that. So, Chezi, you joined ClearCut 2 years ago, right? And at that stage, what did they already have?
So when I joined the company, and it was in February 2022, the company had several important assets. The first one, they had a product ready for commercialization, for start, marketing and sales. And the product was also had regulatory approval in Europe. The company had very strong intellectual property, 10 patents already approved in several geographies, in the United States, in Europe, in China, and Japan, and India. Intellectual property is important as something that protects the company, in two directions, both from other competitors that can claim that we are using something that is similar to their technology, or help us actually against competitors that we believe that they are using our technology. So it's very important, and our position in the intellectual property is very strong. The company had several clinical trials behind them. Those trials proved the effectiveness and efficacy of our device, our technology. And after doing those clinical trials, it helps the company to get the CE mark, the regulatory approval in Europe that made us ready for marketing and sales. This is what we started in 2023. And if I already mentioned the sales, then the company has generated an agreement with a pan-European leader in distribution of medical devices, and some of them are directly connected to breast cancer. And we will be using this distributor, a German company called PFM Medical, for sales in Europe. So these are the major assets that the company had before and when I joined the company 2 years ago.
So let's take a step back and talk about the value proposition here. What problem are you trying to solve, and what did you bring into the market in order to solve this problem? Say a few words about the problem and the device.
So first of all, we are talking about cancer detection. And we actually developed an MRI system, but a very special MRI system. And I'll explain this point. Many people know the big MRI system units in the suites in the hospital, where actually you get inside the room, you need to take all the metals out of your body. When the procedure starts, nobody can be in the room except, of course, the patient that is being tested. In our case, we developed a compact and mobile MRI in order to bring it and put it inside the operating room to provide the surgeon some important information in real time during the surgery. Now, since there are other people inside the operating room, then we needed to develop a machine that will not create any magnetic radiation outside. So everybody can continue to do what they need to do, stand nearby the machine. Our MRI system does not affect any other electronic equipment in the operating room. Any other electronic equipment does not affect our MRI. And we actually, what we do is we don't have any connection with the patient. We scan the tissues that has been already excised, cuts from the patient body, in our case, the patient breast. So we scan the tissue and not the patient or the patient organs, but we can provide the surgeon real-time answers whether there are residuals of cancer in the margin. It's important to say we only test the margin. We are not doing like a regular MRI in-depth testing.
So the idea here, and it has to do with your first indication, is lumpectomy procedures, right? The idea is to allow the surgeon to understand if the margin of the tissue that was excised is free of cancerous cells, right? Is clean.
Yeah.
So
actually,
the idea was, yeah.
When we are talking about the margin, and this is actually the most important for us because the margin was attached to the patient breast in our first application. And if our MRI scanner finds some residuals of cancer in the margin, there is a high probability that there is still residuals of cancer in the patient breast. And in that case, the patient actually should come for additional surgery, a second surgery. This is actually the main thing that we would like to prevent, if possible, or to significantly reduce the second surgery, okay?
So in essence, this technology can be relevant to many surgical procedures in which the surgeon takes out cancerous tissue. but you chose to initiate your journey with breast cancer patient undergoing lumpectomy because over there is a very high ratio of surgeries. After this surgery, the patient is required to come to a second surgery because the tissue wasn't clean, right? It contained cancerous cell. And the reason is that typically nowadays, when the surgeon takes out this piece of tissue, cancerous tissue, it is sent to the pathologist. And it takes days or even weeks until there is a input coming from the pathologist saying if the margins were indeed clean or if there is a need to come for additional surgeries, right?
Yes, exactly. So in breast cancer specifically, what you just described happens in 25% of the cases, meaning 1 out of 4 patients need to come back for a second surgery. And this is a lot. And if you add to this the fact that the prevalence of breast cancer, unfortunately, is going up all over the world, then the numbers are high and will be higher, from a year to a year. And this is actually what we would like to prevent or to reduce significantly. This is why we chose the breast cancer as our first application because of the high numbers and high percentage.
And how many lumpectomies are conducted in a given year?
So today, if we look all over the world, it's more than 1 million lumpectomies a year. 1 million. And 25% of those procedures, the patients are being called, as I said, for a second surgery, which is a very high number. When you use this machine, then you need actually to provide answers immediately, not wait for this. As you mentioned, the regular procedure is that the patient is being released to her home, and then the pathologist is testing the margin, but it can take between several days to several weeks. And this has, triple effect. The first and most important is on the patient. Not only that she, in most of the cases, she has breast cancer, but now the surgeon that she trusted and she thought he or she is the best in the world calls her and tells her, I did everything okay, but still you need to come for a second surgery. And she thinks, why? Did he fail? And he doesn't tell me. If he calls me for a second surgery, is there a chance that he will call me for a third surgery? What about complications? This is something that has a major effect, both psychologically and clinically. The second effect is on the surgeon. We know that most of the surgeons, primarily those who work in the private practice, they would like to do as many surgeries as possible, but not in the same patient. No, this is not what they want to do. And the third effect, which is very important for us as a company, is the money. Any surgery, and we're talking about the second surgery, somebody has to pay for this. It costs money. In some countries, it's the hospital. In other countries, it's the government. It could be the patient. It could be, like in the United States, the insurance companies. Just to give you an example, in the United States, the second surgery, breast cancer surgery, lumpectomy, cost the payer $15,000. It's a huge amount of money, and this is actually what we would like to prevent if possible or to reduce significantly.
Let's say a word about the mechanism of action of this device.
So our device uses one of the known protocols of MRI. It's called diffusion-weighted MRI. What we do is actually we measure the cellularity, the concentration of the atoms. If the cellularity or the concentration of the atoms is very high, so it's very dense, so the fluids can go between the atoms very slowly. This is typical to cancerous tissue. If the cellularity or the concentration of the atoms is low, so there is actually distance between the atoms, the fluids can go very fast between them. This is typically in non-cancerous tissue. And this is actually what we measure. Of course, there is a range, and at the edges of the range, where in one side it's for sure cancerous tissue, and on the other side is for sure non-malignant tissue, we need to define where is the threshold in order to provide a clear answer. Is it cancerous, suspicious to be cancerous, or not? And the location of this, or the way that we define the threshold, is based on all the clinical studies that we did that gave us this actually results and the knowledge where to put the threshold.
And this is your claim for fame, and we'll talk about it when we talk about the clinical studies. But before that, I would like you to walk me through the process using your device in the operating room. How does it work?
Okay, so the surgeon, and this is the purpose of the procedure, first he actually excises, cuts the malignant tissue out of the patient breast. He knows where is the cancer. He cannot actually know whether he removed everything or not. In order to take advantage of our MRI system in real time during the procedure, the surgeon would like to keep the orientation of the tissue that has been removed. So when I say orientation, it's exactly where it was taken, in what angle. The way to do it, there are several ways to do it, with clips, with wires. What we prefer and recommend is actually to use a color coding, 6 colors. So the surgeon treats the tissue, which is three-dimensional, as a cube, although we know it's not a cube. So he stains the 6 aspects, 6 faces of the tissue with 6 colors, with a specific color coding, and he knows exactly which color actually marks an area that was taken from each place in the patient breast.
And this will allow him, after he receives the input from your device, if there is additional tissue that he needs to remove, this coloring would allow him to go back exactly to where he needs in order to excise additional tissue. This is the idea, right?
Yes, exactly.
And also, it's important to mention that these are dyes that are used routinely by pathologists and that do not harm the tissue.
Yes, it's bio-ink,
yeah.
And the pathologists are using actually the same method and the same color coding to mark the tissue. Okay. After the inking, the coloring of tissue, the surgeon needs actually to decide where he would like to scan. Some surgeons would like to scan the entire tissue, all the 6 aspects. This is what we did in our clinical studies. Some of them would like to scan only one aspect. Some of them suspect a specific area in one specific aspect. So after the surgeon decided where he would like to scan, in what aspect, he actually put the tissue inside our disposable, which we call a ClearCoast tissue container. And after he chose the aspect that he would like to scan, he would like to put it on the glass that we have in the tissue container in the lower part. In order to attach it to the glass, he puts it inside our scanner for 3 seconds of vacuum and then slides the tissue container inside the machine. The first thing that we do, we have a regular optical camera inside our MRI scanner. So we take an optical picture of the tissue. When I say the tissue, it's of course the aspect that was attached to the glass. So one color, and you see on the side some other colors from the other sides of the other aspects. And then we actually, or the machine starts to do the scan pixel by pixel. We create a special image that you can see on the screen of our machine on the right side. And this picture is very, very easy to understand and to interpret. You don't need to be a radiologist or a pathologist. And I can tell you, Adi, you don't even need to be a surgeon or a physician to understand it. It actually shows 2 colors. All the areas that are colored in blue are non-suspicious to be cancerous. All the areas that are colored in red are suspicious to be cancerous. We send back from the image that we created, the red pixels, to the optical picture that we actually took at the beginning. And based on the location of the red pixels and on the color, the surgeon knows exactly where to get back to the patient that is still lying on the bed inside the operating room and do the correction in order not to leave the residuals of cancer in her breast. So he knows exactly where to do it, and it means that he does another cut, another excision, and we can, of course, scan this second tissue that was removed from the patient, again with our MRI scanner. It's important to say that we do not change the shape of the tissue that is being scanned by our device. We do not put any materials, no liquids, nothing. We would like to maintain it as actually it came to us, to the machine. Why? Because after we finish to do the scan, the tissue will be sent to the pathologist. The pathologist is the gold standard, and the pathologist will do the margin assessment after our first with second scan, as he used to do if we wouldn't be in the operating room. This is very important. We are not going to replace the pathologist. We are not going to be instead of the pathologist. On the contrary, in some cases, we can even help the pathologist and to guide the pathology where to look. But again, what is really important is to prevent a second surgery with regard to the patient.
So the pathology is indeed the gold standard, but in recent years, several new solutions came into the market in order to try and answer such a need, the need that you described earlier. Let's talk a little bit about the competitors.
Okay, we're talking about area which we call margin assessment. And the margin assessment has been evolving in the last 12 to 15 years. At the beginning, after the tissue was excised, was cut from the patient breast, it was provided to a pathologist if this pathologist would be available, immediately after the surgery. And in order to bring a result relatively fast, when I say fast, it's 1 to 2 hours, it's not minutes, then what the pathologist did is using a method which is called frozen section. He actually freezed the tissue. He made several slices and looked under the microscope. Of course, it requires a pathologist because the image in the microscope is histological and nobody other than pathologists or radiologists can understand. If he found some residuals, he would actually go back to the surgeon and ask him to do additional excision of the malignant tissue. Of course, since it takes 1 to 2 hours, then it can only be done in places that can hold the operating room occupied for this amount of time. This does not happen in most of the hospitals in the world. Second method that physicians used, and it actually was theoretically a competition, is some imaging modalities like ultrasound, for example, or X-ray. Now, in ultrasound and X-ray, you can see whether the tissue is regular or irregular, but you cannot say for sure whether the tissue is cancerous or not. So there are still some hospitals that are using X-ray and ultrasound at the beginning of the surgery to guide the surgeon to the right location. But this is not to actually assess whether it's cancerous or not. In the last 7 to 10 years, several companies came with several technologies for margin assessment. The first technology was RF spectroscopy. For example, a company with the name Dune Medical did it. And there were two disadvantages in using this technology. The first one is that it was done with a manual probe that the surgeon actually moved manually from one point to another, so it missed a lot. And the second disadvantage is that the clinical results were not good enough. So today we don't find many users of such technology. Then came other technologies that still exist today, and they are continued actually to develop them. One is called optical coherence tomography. Another is called confocal microscopy. The problem in those technologies is that, again, they create an image that only a pathologist or radiologist can understand, but they are not in the operating room. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to find a method, maybe using artificial intelligence, that will take time and will require a lot of many patients in clinical studies to prove it, in order to create something that the surgeon will understand, but
today,
does not exist.
it's fair to say that you are the only company with a solution that does not require the involvement of a pathologist. The
Exactly.
surgeon can interpret the results or the input provided by your device in real time, and it does not require the involvement of anybody. This is one unique advantage that you currently have over other competitors.
You are correct, Adi, and this is the time to say that if you look at all the existing technology of margin assessment, we are the only one with MRI. And this by itself is a big advantage because MRI is known, and we didn't invent the MRI for the capability of cancer detection, while all the other technologies need to prove themselves and convince physicians, surgeons, and scientists why they are actually good for this margin assessment. And by the way, one of the reasons that we are the only one with MRI is what I actually mentioned at the beginning, and this is our strong intellectual property.
Okay, let's move forward. Let's talk about your clinical data, the clinical data you generated up until now, mostly in Europe, right?
Yes. So in the last 7 or 8 years, we did several clinical studies. The first one was a feasibility study just to see that we do the right thing and we are successful in this cancer detection. It was a study that was called point to point. We chose several points on the margin. We scanned them. We decided if we detect a cancerous area, Then we sent it blindly to the pathologist. He did the same, and we compared the results. We had very promising results, and then we started to work more on the development of the machine. And we did additional 2 trials that were more close to the real world, not just to pick several points on the margin, but to scan the entire margin. We call this margin to margin, and we actually compared what we detected in the entire margin. Again, the pathologists did the same. We compared the results, and we had very good results that thanks to those results in the clinical studies, we received regulatory approval in Europe, the CE mark. Afterwards, we did a different study, which was the first one that the surgeon was involved. Okay, so we call it MRO, magnetic resonance outcome, and we actually scanned the tissue, and then the surgeon looks at our results and made a decision whether he needs to do correction, and if so, where exactly to do it. This study, which we are going, by the way, to do a new publication in the next coming months, like we did publications for the other studies, we actually showed that we have sensitivity very high, around 80%, and also sensitivity, specificity very high, close to 80%. And I must say that based on formal publication of our competitors, we are in much better performance. So if we are close to 80% in those parameters, they are around 40 or 50%, which is a huge difference that differentiates us from the other competitors. And the fact that we produce an image that everybody can understand and they not is also another advantage that we have very clearly.
Okay, so following regulatory approval in Europe, you partnered with a strong European German partner. Say a few words about the business model.
Okay, as I said, our product contains 2 parts: the machine, the MRI machine, the capital equipment, which is being called like this, and the disposable part, okay, the tissue container. Now, today, in 2023, we did the initial sales, and when I say sales, it's actually what we sold to the distributor, to the German distributor. So we have a transfer prices of both the capital equipment and the tissue container. The business model right now is that our distributor also sells the capital equipment and the tissue containers to the customers. The end user price of the capital equipment is like in the area of magnitude, like all the other competitors, around $150,000. And the end user price of the disposable is around $500 to $600. So this is our business model right now. But we know that this is something that will also need to be evolved, depends on the country, depends on the reimbursement system in each and every location. So we can anticipate several models in the future. One of them will be to lease the device and sell the disposable for higher price. Or if, for example, it's very, very big hospital with many lumpectomy procedures internally, it can be that we will lend the device and they will buy a package of many disposables in advance for higher price. So it will be a mix of several business models, and at the end, it could be even that we will give all the disposables and we will charge per click, what we call, okay, per procedure, and we will not need actually to charge for every disposable physically.
And so the prices are in the same ballpark as your competitors, in essence.
Yes, we continue to follow up what our competitors are doing, and we're trying to be in the prices competitive. The performance, we are there.
Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming clinical development in the US. This is the next step, right? And you're currently discussing the design of the study with the FDA. How would this study look like? What can you tell us?
Okay, first of all, you're right. This is very, very important for us because the US market is a huge market and we would like to be there. And currently we have only the European regulatory approval. So what we did, we are using consultants and several physicians from the United States. One of them is Dr. Barry Rosen, our chief medical officer. He's a well-known breast surgeon from Chicago area. Another one is Dr. Freya Schnabel. She's a well-known breast surgeon from New York and very experienced in margin assessment. And all of them together helped us to build the protocol and the structure of the study. We already met with the FDA. It's called pre-submission meeting. We presented everything after planning it with our consultants. And we're happy to say that FDA accepted our clinical studies. So the structure will be the following. We are talking about a study with about 400 patients, since we anticipate that it will take about a year and a half. And since we want to do it relatively and to finish it relatively fast, it will be done in 8 to 10 centers. By the way, the FDA allows that up to half of the clinical centers in the US study can be out of the United States. So we can use well-known centers in Europe, also in Israel. And what actually will be the endpoints, we agreed with the FDA about 2 endpoints. The primary endpoints will be unaddressed positive margin, meaning that after the surgeon did everything and sent the tissue to the pathologist finds what are the unaddressed positive margin, and it will be compared to the control group that didn't have in the operating room our device. So actually, this is something which is very important to compare those things. The secondary endpoint will be the number of the re-excision rate, the second surgery. And this will also be compared to the control group that actually didn't went through the scan of our device inside the operating room. By the way, it's important to say that re-excision rate, which is what we want to achieve, is not in 100% correlated to the performance of our device, because there are cases where we or the pathologist recommend to do additional surgery, but it will not be conducted because the surgeon may decide that the patient will go to radiation or chemotherapy, or in some cases, even the patient decides not to go for a second surgery. So, but in most of the cases, there is a correlation between the re-excision. This is what we want to prove in the clinical study in the United States.
And besides the clinical study in the United States, I think that moving forward, it would be relatively, I would call it easy, somewhat easy, to show that you're able to reduce the second surgery because you're already in the market. And you would be able to show this with real world evidence, which is by far more important than the data you can generate with a clinical study, which is a little bit different than reality, especially in such circumstances. So I think that moving forward, you would be able to generate plenty of such data, primarily from Europe, and hopefully moving forward from the US as well.
So first of all, we will continue to strengthen our clinical evidence. This is what we would like to do. But you said something very important. Since we are already selling in Europe and we have the approval and we actually can sell, we will take advantage of the fact that it can be done through what we call post-market studies. So in clinical studies, at the beginning of the days of the company, we had to fund everything, to pay for all the study, to pay for the surgeons and the patients and everything. And in post-market studies, it will be, much lower expense for the company.
Speaking of Europe and the fact that you're already there, I wanted to ask you a question about additional indications, because your technology can be applied to many procedures in which the surgeon excise malignant tissue from the patient's body. And the fact that you're already in the market would make it very, very easy to move forward in that direction. Once you secure the funds, you need to do that because the surgeons are already using it, right? It's there, it's in the hospital. It would be very, very easy to pursue new indications. What other indications are you considering?
So as you said, we have an MRI system that can be used for many types of cancer. The most important principle is, because we are only testing the margin and not the entire in-depth tissue, is the need for real-time answer during the surgery. So currently we are thinking about two applications that we will, of course, test before we decide which will be the next product. Mm-hmm. One of them is lung cancer, and we are talking about surgeries where the surgeon excise part of the lung with a malignant tissue, not when it takes the entire lobe out. Then you don't need real-time answer. In lung cancer, there is also another thing, and this is actually the difficulty in biopsy, to be sure that you took the sample from the right location. And this is something that we can help also with our scan of the excised tissue. Another application that we will also consider is a special procedure of skin cancer, which is called MOS, usually done in visible organs of the body. Think about a person that has cancer on his face. You don't want, to drill very deep inside the face and say you are clean, you don't have cancer, but you look, like a zombie. And what people are using today is what I mentioned and explained as frozen section, a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. But frozen section has disadvantages, and many dermatologists and skin cancer surgeons actually went and met with us and said that they think it's very important. So these are the two applications that we will consider.
Sounds very exciting. Let's go back for a second to talk about the market of the breast cancer. How do you foresee revenue in this market? Give me kind of the high-level numbers so we get the ballpark of your understanding of this market.
Yeah, so based on the number of lumpectomies that we already mentioned, more than 1 million today around the world, and this is unfortunately going up. If you take this and if you take the current pricing that we will charge for our devices, we believe that in the next 2 years we will reach 5% market share in the world, and after 4 years we will reach more than 15% of the market. Of course, it depends on the competition, but we are there now, and we already showed the clinical results and the performance, which is actually much advantageous and higher than our competition. So this is actually what we believe will be our market share, and we are talking only about breast cancer. And if we go to other applications, then this number will change on the positive side.
Okay, so up until now you guys raised $23 million, right?
Right.
Which supported all your activity, the clinical development, the device development, the CE, and the initiation of sales and marketing in Europe. Moving forward, how much money do you need to raise, and what are you going to do with it?
So currently, our target in this financing round is around $15 million. We will use this amount of money for several activities. First of all, and most important, as we mentioned, the clinical study in the United States and getting the FDA approval and starting the activities there. This will cost around half of this financing, around $7 to $8 million. And the other half will be used to continue push the sales in Europe, to penetrate to countries out of Europe and out of the United States while we still don't have the FDA approval, to the development of the second application and maybe do some feasibility for other application for the future. And also something that at the beginning I mentioned, we already working on the development of the second generation device that will have many advantages, but this is still under development. We will not go into details right now.
Okay, so let me try and summarize the value proposition you showed to date. So you have a device, but then I don't know if we mentioned it. It's called ClearCoast. Okay, so ClearCoast is first to market portable MRI. Okay, which allows to in real time to show the surgeon if the margins are clean. Okay, and the first indication is, as we discussed, lumpectomy procedures. You have a strong IP portfolio. The system employs diffusion-weighted imaging technology, right? A long recognized diagnostic tool that distinguishes between cancer cell and normal tissue. And in that sense, I think that the adoption is somewhat easier because people are very well aware with this MRI capability. You look at a market of roughly 1 million procedures a year, okay? So if you're earning money only from the disposable, okay, and you sell a piece for $500, that means, and you get let's say a market share of 20%, then you are able to generate revenue of about $100 million in a given year, only for this indication. You have clinical studies that demonstrated high performance and potential for significant reduction of additional surgeries. In that sense, this is a huge mitigation to the upcoming clinical study in the US. There is almost a 100% probability that you would be able to achieve your primary endpoint. We said that the system is CE marked, and you're already selling. And the clinical study in the US would start after you finalize this round of fundraising. And according to your estimation, the product can receive FDA approval by the beginning of 2026.
Right. This is what we hope, and this is what we're planning.
And there are additional indications which are extremely relevant for this technology. So I must ask you something that many investors are interested in, which is what are the main risks? How do you perceive your main risks, and how do you intend to mitigate them?
Okay, first of all, let's not forget, and this is actually my role and my responsibility, we are still a small startup company, and we are still just beginning, to show the device, to sell it, and to show that it has many advantages for surgeons, for patients, and for payers. We are at the beginning of in our way. The first risk that I see is actually how much time it will take us to show and to prove that we definitely reduce the re-excision, the second surgeries, okay? Because this is very important as one of the parameters, the economic parameters, and this is very important for hospitals and all the buyers. So we don't know how much it will take us, and this is definitely a risk. If I think about how we can mitigate this risk, the only way to do it is, to enhance our presence and sales and clinical proofs, meaning we mentioned the post-market studies that we will continue to do currently in Europe, afterwards out of Europe and in the United States, and hopefully also we will show it in the clinical study in the United States. So this is the first risk that I see. The second risk is something that I believe every company must see in front of our eyes all the time, and this is the competition. Okay, we continue to follow up everything that our competitors are doing. Okay, we do it when we go to trade shows and conferences, and we look at the papers and everything, and they have progress, and we need to take it into consideration. We need also to continue and to do development to increase our efficacy and effectiveness, but this is a risk. And the only way, again, to reduce this risk is to increase our presence in the market. And I believe that we have advantage because if I already said, and you mentioned it, that currently we can immediately have the surgeon inside the operating room because of the easy way to interpret what we produce, the image that we produce. This is the advantage that we have currently, and it will help us to increase the presence, hopefully to gain enough market share that even if our competitors will have better products, still many physicians, hospitals, investors, whoever will know us, will know our advantages, will believe in what we are doing, and this is actually will reduce the risk.
Makes sense. We're nearing the end of our meeting, and I would like to ask, how do you want to summarize our encounter?
So to summarize this meeting, I would like to talk about the most important thing, and this is the patients. We are talking about breast cancer patients that, as we covered during our conversation, they have the fear that even they went through a surgery, they didn't get rid of the entire disease, okay? There could be that they will be called for a second surgery, and if they will be called for a second surgery, maybe something will be there, they don't know. With our technology, with our innovation, we showed and we can certainly reduce the number of re-excision. And if we do this, there is also a high probability that we will help those patients to be more clear and clean from the disease, from the cancer. So we believe that our ClearCoast MRI system is and will be a game changer, and then the coast will definitely be more clear.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I hope this podcast will help you guys raise the capital you need. I hope that women that need to undergo lumpectomy would be aware of this technology and would be able to avoid second surgery. The trauma of breast cancer is more than enough. For audience interested in learning more about the clinical data generated by ClearCut, I recommend visiting ClearCut website. This podcast is available on my LinkedIn page called The Healthcare Stage, and also on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you're working at companies developing novel solutions aimed at improving the lives of others, or you are a researcher in hospital or academia conducting groundbreaking research with potential clinical application, do get in touch with me at adi@thehealthcarestage.com. Chezi, I hope the company will achieve all its milestones. Thank you so much for coming over. It was an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Adi. And it's always a pleasure, to speak with someone that comes from this industry and understand it. Thank you for all your work. Excellent work. Thank you.